let's explore like how fiscal policies and government borrowing are affecting the financial landscape. As in, the current fiscal deficit is substantial, with the projections indicating a deficit of approximately $1.5 trillion this year. And Treasury issuance is expected to increase significantly over the next 18 months. So, how do you see these factors influencing term premiums and investor behavior?
But term premium is like it's like dark matter. We know it must exist, but it's nearly impossible to actually quantify and measure, right? Like the way that I think about term premium is negative right now. Why? Well, because the curve's inverted. Full stop, right?
Right.
Like that's the whole reason why, right? And the curves and term premium is negative because everyone thinks that the Federal Reserve is going to cut interest rates, right? And that's so of course it's going to be negative because your borrowing cost at the front end is more than your borrowing cost at the long end. It's that simple. But to go to your fiscal question, so that's much more interesting. We have had so many questions about the deficit and about saying when does it become unsustainable? When do people stop buying treasuries? How much demand can there be for treasuries given how large deficits are? Our projection is $1.9 trillion deficits for the next 3 years, and then they'll probably go up some. So you are talking about a substantial amount of supply. But keep in mind, $1.9 trillion deficits this year, next year, and the year after actually means that the deficit to GDP is going down. And deficit to nominal GDP actually is negative. So you actually have debt to GDP right now as of 2024, assuming our forecast is correct, which it should be because we're 3/4 of the way through the fiscal year, is you actually will have debt to GDP be lower at the end of this fiscal year, than it was last fiscal year. So that's a good sign, right? Like, so we just can't have deficits going up more, right? And I think that's one of the misnomers, the misnomers here. There is a lot less fiscal flexibility. I think that's something that's underappreciated because a lot of the reason, or I say a lot, I mean, I can quantify it more, but the one of the big reasons why deficits keep growing is not necessarily from fiscal stimulus of the past. It's part of it. But the big thing is that we have a lot of baby boomers that are retiring and taking on Social Security and Medicare. And then when you have inflation as high as it was, you have cost of living adjustments that then increase the amount that the government has to pay out to those retirees and others. Who receive those benefits. So right now, around 45% of all government spending, 45% of all government spending is just on Social Security, Medicare, and other mandatory things. So the flexibility of what the government can do to reduce the amount of that spending is very, very low and politically impossible, which is the big problem, right? Like really, this was like the we've known that this was going to be a problem, and the baby boomers retiring was going to be a problem for the last 40 years, but no one politically could ever do anything about it, and which has been really the big issue. But now it's come home to roost, right? So now we're at a situation where we are living in the middle of everyone retiring, and until the baby boomers kind of come off of the Social Security rolls in 15 or 20 years, we're going to have we're not going to be able to have flexibility in the fiscal spending that all these politicians come out there and say, I want to do this with the taxpayers' money. I want to do that with the taxpayers' money. Well, they can't because it's all basically in interest payments and the Social Security and Medicare payments right now. So there isn't a lot that they can do. From the demand side, we always hear like, how much demand can there be? Well, so far, demand has not been an issue. If demand was a problem, if the supply was too high compared to the amount of demand and potential demand, then you'd see government auctions be done just go very poorly. You wouldn't see people show up. There wouldn't be buyers in the primary market. Auctions the last couple of months have been great. I mean, they've been really good. They've been solid. They've had good demand. They've come in lower interest rates many times than we were expecting. The times when the auctions have gone bad is, quite frankly, when the market thought that the Fed was going to raise interest rates and the market was selling off. So basically, the demand for treasuries has been very kind of cyclical with expectations for what the Fed's going to do. That being said, you do see things like swap spreads being negative, I think, is partially a sign that deficits are very high and that people are that there's only so much balance sheet to go around. So the funding of treasuries, so the way that a lot of levered investors buy treasuries is by you buy a treasury and then you lend it out to someone else in what's called a repurchase agreement. But the size of the repurchase agreement market has not grown substantially compared to the size of the overall market. Plus, you have these regulations, the Basel regulations we talked about, some Dodd-Frank regulations and the like, that have also reduced the amount of leverage that hedge funds and other levered investors are allowed to take. So all of those things have contributed to derivatives, being quote unquote rich. So they're trading at a lower yield or lower rate than treasuries are yielding.